today? Wet. Did you get enough rain this weekend for the rest of the year?
Yes.
Saturday was crazy.
And some of those pipes burst. That was crazy.
And it's just the beginning of the fall. So we're gonna have, are we gonna have snow this year? Like lots and lots and lots by the looks of it? I prefer to get lots of snow, not just a little bit.
Oh,
Yes. Yeah, because then, right, because otherwise you still have to get out and drive on it, and you get stuck everywhere, whereas if it snows a lot, then you stay home.
We didn't get any last year. I mean, no snow days.
Yeah, we didn't, right.
Not one.
But the year before we did get quite a bit.
We did.
Anyhow, so last week we talked about the history of rhetoric, right? And how the way public speaking is today, those philosophies and those theories that we talked about, that history is still relevant today because public speaking hasn't changed that much, besides the technology that we use to approach an audience. This morning, as you can see on the board, I have a quick description of what an informative speech is. And it's one that you use to explain, describe, to educate an audience. And basically you're lecturing about a certain item that you decided you wanted to talk to the audience about. You do have to be careful because it's not a persuasive speech, and keep that in mind when you select the topic, because I'm not asking you to convince me to go out and do anything. You're just lecturing about a certain issue or situation that you decided you found intriguing or interesting in some way, shape, or form. Maybe something that you knew from before already, right? Once you choose your topic, you want to do research right away, immediately, because it takes about 2 weeks to prepare. And those 2 weeks are going to come up when the speech is due on October the 14th, which is Monday, or falls on a Monday. You want to be prepared for that day. Remember we talked about it a little bit last time, the best way, and really the only way to succeed in this class is by preparing and rehearsing and practicing a gazillion billion times, and it's not an exaggeration in any way, shape, or form. You want to be fully prepared, because remember the example I was telling you about is that you could take a test in a chemistry class or a history class and nobody will know that you didn't prepare, but in this class, because you're a peer, everybody knows that you don't know what you're talking about, or that you didn't prepare because you're struggling to grasp words out of thin air that don't sound normal or don't sound like they belong, and you feel that way also, then you begin to struggle, and it's just not the best thing to do. So prepare ahead of time, do the research, and start right away. That's kind of the name of the game for public speaking. Remember, it's not persuasive, so you're not supposed to ask for the audience to do anything. I know that if I don't tell you, for example, about certain topics that you should not be choosing, then someone is bound to select that topic, because they do make for good speeches, by the way, but just not for the purpose that we're trying to obtain in this class at this moment anyway. And that is, for example, don't talk about drinking and driving, because what does it make you want to say at the end? So don't drink and drive, right? And number one, that topic has been overdone in public speaking, and it is not a novel, it's not the most exciting, and it's kind of sad anyway. You know what I mean? That's not how you want to begin the class with your one major assignment that is worth 100 points. You don't want to talk about abortion, you don't want to talk about religion or politics, or even how to commit suicide. Not good. You want to, and by the way, we're going to look at a lecture, and I believe that lecture is going to begin tomorrow, right? It's going to be right away as to how to select a topic, because it's the first item on the agenda. Then we're going to cover our lecture on introductions and conclusions, ways of organizing the speech, how to do an outline. We're going to talk about all those lectures because we have 2 weeks before we get to the speech, and yet you have to begin preparing so that you're ready for that day. For your informative speech, I'm going to give you a grading form that I'm going to post to Canvas. You're supposed to download it. You're supposed to bring it with you on the day of your presentation. You give it to me, and I'm going to fill it out on that day. I'm going to score your presentation based on that criteria. That criteria has 9 different elements that you're supposed to be graded up against. For example, you cannot begin your presentation. And by the way, lesson number 1 in public speaking ever, never, ever, 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 ever forget. You're not responsible for never doing this. You can never come up here and say, hi class, today I'm going to talk to you about, or the topic of my speech is, because you lose -5. How clever and intellectual is that? It's not, right? And you will lose -5. Same in the end. You don't want to say, that's it. That's all I prepared for you today. Have you noticed how speakers that are not prepared or that are not trained in public speaking will say that? So you're not supposed to, because I will take -5 if you do those 2, or either one. Then, so you don't say the topic of my speech to begin your presentation, and you do not say that's it in the end. So then, dress code. On the day of your presentation, I'm going to ask you to dress conservatively, and that means basically groom yourself to the best of your ability. And if blue jeans is all you own, then I'm okay with that. That would not be my preference if I was doing a presentation and the presentation is supposed to be for a professional setting. But if that's all you own, then that's fine. Just groom yourself to make yourself look as best as you know how to, right? So then, if you don't comply with that, it's -10. If you wear a t-shirt that says Cancun Spring Break 2009 Budweiser Tournament, and you're speaking about the North American Free Trade Agreement, no, it's not going to work out. So you want to dress conservatively. No big holes on your jeans or torn off t-shirts, and you look like you were attacked on the parking lot by a wolf before you got up here. Not good. You know, I'm kidding, right? But it's kind of true. Anyhow, so use to visual aids, and it's -5 for each one that you do not bring with you. We're not using PowerPoint. I want you to physically create 2 items, and you don't have to create them, but perhaps you have something that you're going to talk about that you already have something at home. So you bring that in and you show it to the class when you're going through the presentation. All right. Remember, there is a whole chapter on visual aids, and that comes in, I believe, beyond or past the date for the informative speech. And right now, if you bring 2 visual aids, you get credit. You bring 1, you get -5. You bring 2, you don't lose any points. Because this criteria is going to be on that grading form, and I'm checking through it as you go through your presentation. Then you have to orally quote or verbally quote the resources, and that means that I want you to tell me where you received this information from. You did research, and it's kind of like writing a research paper, right? You research this information, and you're going to tell the audience, for example, that there are approximately 11.5 or 12.5 million undocumented immigrants that come from Mexico, and Mexico alone, each year. So how will you know that? You read it somewhere, right? Or it was in the news, or you did an interview. Somehow you saw it somewhere. Okay, where did that come from?
You can just say like according to.
So you will quote it, right? The way you would do it on your research paper or similar to that. You want to be pretty formal, and you can say, for example, according to Ted Conover, who has written a book titled Coyotes, which is about undocumented immigrants coming to the United States. Well, in his book, he reports that the INS, the Immigration and Naturalization Services, has done research, and they point to 11.5 or 12.5 million undocumented immigrants. And the biggest part of it all, and the biggest news about that story, is that they're from Mexico and Mexico alone. See, so then you're telling us where you got the information from. You could be very casual and say, you know what, I was reading the Huffington Post yesterday, and I found out that Jennifer Aniston is getting divorced, whatever it is. Whatever it is that you read, you tell us where you got the information from, even if it's, if you're not being so formal. You have to quote 3 sources as you go through your presentation. You don't get to the end of the speech and then quote, by the way, I got my information from these 3 sources. You do it as you will do it in text on your essay, on your research paper. You will do it throughout the presentation. Whenever you quote a source, whenever you're speaking about something that that is not, say, common knowledge. Because this idea of 12.5 undocumented immigrants, well, yes, it has been reported many times before, but it's still a concept that is difficult to grasp and something that is not in our minds, etc., right? If you're going to talk about the Eiffel Tower or mountain biking or your favorite book or a writer or Maria Montessori or whatever it is, find information that you can quote through your presentation, 3 of them minimum. If you only quote 1, you lose -10. If you only quote 2, you lose -5. If you don't quote any, then -15. That information, where you got the information from, you put it on a works cited. The same way you would write a research paper, you would write the references as to where you received the information from. I don't necessarily want the information that you're quoting, but where you got the information from. The way you will quote it on an APA or an OSI on a research paper. Then the time limits are 5 to 7 minutes. Minimum 5, maximum 7. You cannot speak for 15 minutes until you turn blue in the face, or you can't be here for 2 minutes because there is a criteria to follow, and that is 5 to 7. If you speak for 7:01, I'm going to take -5. If you speak for 7:31, -10. 8:01, -15. 9:59, you only points. Same if it's under. If you speak for 4:59, then you lose -5. If you speak for 4:29, that's -10. If you're up here for 2 minutes, that's not going to be good because your grade is going to suffer quite a bit. You have to keep it within the time. That's the idea of being trained in public speaking. We're supposed to get through 5 speakers on that day. How are we going to if you don't stay within the time? 5 to 7 works well, and we can get through 5 each day. The #1 challenge that students have when doing a presentation is timing. When we get up here, and it happens to all of us every single time. I'm recording myself right now, and when I'm just thinking about it, my stomach was turning. Because, and remember, I said the day that we met. You didn't know this, and the only reason I'm sharing it, I would have never shared this with you, but we're all in the same boat, right? And we are all going through the same experience, and perhaps you weren't. And if you weren't, that's great. That's really good. That's excellent. I envy you. But even when I was getting ready to come up from behind the podium the first day, my stomach was turning. Because it's that anxiety that builds that wanting to do well, right? Wanting to succeed in your presentation. So anyhow, the one challenge that I have seen is time. Because you are anxious and you don't feel well, and you go over time. Or you could be up here for 2 minutes and it feels like you've been up here for 2 hours, or you can be up here for 15 minutes and it feels like you've been up here for 30 seconds. The opposite could be true. Be careful with the time. You should, for example, ask someone in the class to cue you with the time. And you could do, say, cards with numbers that, these are my old cards that I used when I took this class. I still have them. And so you can have cards that say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, like you have 1 minute left. Or you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6:30, stop, whatever works for you. And you cue, or someone can cue you from the audience. I can't because I'm sitting on the back of the class and I'm grading your presentation. So I cannot be concerned with the time. I will take your time, but all I do is just click and click at the beginning and at the end on my watch or on my phone so that I have the timing, but I don't want to have to worry about the grades and the comments and the timing and is anything else going on in the class. All right, I need to be on your presentation until you get through the end, and then click again. I write the time and score the presentation and give you a grade. So timing is your #1 enemy for any one of the presentations. It's the single one factor that a student struggles with. It doesn't have to be if you prepare ahead of time, and if you ask someone in the class and you work with them to cue each other. Okay, show me when I took this class, I told the classmate, okay, so I want to go up on the time. So when I get to 5.5, don't show me anymore. I will be conscious that that's 5.5, and then I know what I need to do, because if I saw any more, if I saw 6:45, forget it, I would just panic. And just completely just ignore the time at that point in time. So just 5.5, and then I'll wrap it up after that. By the way, all easier said than done. What about, so you can't read. If you read, you're gonna lose a lot of points. If you read, I will invent new ways to get points off from your presentation. It is not a reading assignment. You cannot possibly read your presentation. You have to say, if you need to memorize your presentation, it's up to you. If English is your second language, maybe you can, and perhaps it works for you. I know it works for me, but what we're supposed to teach and what you're supposed to do is to speak extemporaneously. And that means that, you know, like this morning, I didn't memorize the information. I have an outline. In fact, that's my outline, I'm following it, but I didn't memorize every single word that I was going to use. But I know exactly what goes on each one of the sections, so I know exactly what to say because I've done this research before and I've spoken on it before, so I know without having to look at it and read it to you, I can tell you what it is. All right, so then if you can't read, if you read too much, you're going to lose points. And based on how much you read, you will lose that many points. I couldn't tell you how much I will take it based on how much you read. But if you're reading too much, then that's just not going to be good. That's not going to work out. You want to prepare ahead of time. If you want to do index cards, you can.